All right, everyone. Welcome back to all my listeners. It's a brand new season for the podcast. This is episode 3 in season 15. Today is Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. All right, you guys, today's episode is going to be short and sweet. It is approaching the holiday weekend, so I hope you guys all have the long weekend planned for something fun. Maybe those of you who live near the beach, if you have some good warm weather your way. My entire weekend is going to be on the colder side, unfortunately. We had highs last week of up to 90. It was crazy, and now it's cold and raining once again. But I am looking forward to a nice long weekend. I hope all of you are as well. All right, so today's quick episode is going to be featuring my Newsworthy spotlight on May's Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So exciting. And then, of course, in my Trusty tip, this entire month, I've been focusing on the importance of behavioral healthcare, right? So I'm going to focus today's segment on modifiers specific to the behavioral health space. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and close out and round out today's episode with another remarkable quote on hope and aspirations by a phenomenal American Asian female, Vera Wang. All right, you guys, let's get into it. So, in today's Newsworthy, the Library of Congress hosts a wonderful website, and I'm going to make sure I include it in my show notes for all of you. It's absolutely fantastic. So, the Library of Congress is hosting a wonderful website this year in 2025, May, the entire month, that is dedicated to May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, a celebration of Asians and Pacific Islanders in the United States. Now, this is a rather broad term. Asian Pacific encompasses all of the Asian continent and the Pacific Islands of Melanesia, which include New Guinea, New Caledonia, Vanuatu, Fiji, and the Solomon Islands. It also includes Micronesia, which house the islands of the Marianas, Guam, Wake Island, Palau, the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, Nauru, and the Federated States of Micronesia, as well as Polynesia. And the islands that comprise Polynesia are New Zealand, the Hawaiian Islands, Rotuma, the Midway Islands, Samoa, American Samoa, Tonga, Tuvalu, the Cook Islands, French Polynesia, and Easter Island. Now, the month of May was chosen to commemorate the immigration of the first Japanese to the United States on May 7th, 1843, and to mark the anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10th, 1869. The majority of the workers who laid tracks were Chinese immigrants. Now, in 1992, the month of May was designated by President George H.W. Bush as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Now, the annual celebration honors the many contributions and accomplishments of Asian Americans, Pacific Islander Americans, and Native Hawaiians. All right, you guys, now it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. So, the month of May has been filled with my trusty tips on behavioral health. I started the month discussing treatment plans. Last week, I went into time-based codes and documenting for time. Now, today, I wanted to go ahead and talk about modifiers. Well, a few of them, those that are specific to behavioral healthcare. So today, I wanted to discuss the importance of these modifiers in healthcare billing and coding, but specifically for behavioral health. The importance of modifiers. It's crucial for accurate billing and reimbursement in this behavioral health space because they help clarify the nature of the service as well as clarify who the provider is. Now, let's focus on some of these unusual modifiers that I see every day, like the U modifiers. Now, these are state-specific U modifiers, and they can be tailored to an individual state's Medicaid policy when no other modifier adequately represents the policy's purpose. Now, the state determines how each U modifier is to be used, and the same U modifier can take on different meanings when it's used with different service or supply codes. And I think I've picked some really good modifiers in today's segment that highlight this sort of duality of the U modifiers as well as other modifiers. So you've got to pay attention to your various state policies and remember that these unusual U modifiers or H modifiers, as I go over them, can take on a dual purpose. Now, in Ohio, for example, Medicaid rules governing services are generally grouped within the Ohio Administrative Code, also called the OAC, by the type of provider or the nature of the service. Now, here are just a few fee-for-service U modifiers that are currently in place for fiscal year 2025 for Ohio Medicaid. Now, there's something called U1, which is defined as used to identify the patient location of home when a telehealth service was delivered. There's also something called U2, which is used to identify the patient location of school when a telehealth service was delivered. There's also a modifier called U3, which is used to identify the patient location of inpatient hospital when a telehealth service was delivered. There's also the modifier U4, which is used to identify the patient location of outpatient hospital when a telehealth service was delivered. There's also the modifier U5, which is used to identify the patient location of nursing facility when a telehealth service was delivered. And finally, there is a modifier called U6, which is used to identify the patient location of intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual disabilities when a telehealth service was delivered. Now, this unique group of U codes I've seen again and again, or I have not seen again and again, right? Because there is a discrepancy in the billing, right? So you're holding those claims up when you're filing them to your state, Ohio Medicaid payers. So, there's lots of nuance that you have to remember to cross-check. Not only in documentation, you've got to look at those billing practices solidly as well. Now, there are also many other unusual modifiers that let payers know the level of education that was obtained by the provider. And that's very, very important for the various provider types in our behavioral healthcare space. Now, those include the modifier HN, which stands for someone who's obtained a bachelor's degree level. There's also the modifier HO, which is for someone who's obtained the master's degree level. And finally, there's the modifier HP, like Paul, which stands for someone who's obtained the very highest or doctoral degree level. Now, there are also modifiers for specific services for specific patient populations, right? Like our ABA therapy or applied behavioral analysis therapy. Now, those particular sets of services are specific for children with autism spectrum disorder. Now, the modifiers, again, they may go back to those that I've already highlighted, those H modifiers, right? And as I stated earlier, there might be a dual purpose. So pay attention to your states or to your payers and what they require. So those ABA services may require you to append the modifier HM as in Mary or HN as in Nancy to indicate a service was performed by a RBT or a registered behavior technician. Or you may need to append the modifier HO or the modifier HP as in Paul to indicate a service that was performed by a BCBA or a board-certified behavior analyst, or other qualified healthcare professional, a QHP. So again, it's important to check your state payer policies and state laws to see which modifiers are applicable to the various types of behavioral health services that your providers are rendering. And finally, I focus Season 15 Spark on hopes and aspirations. I want this 15th season Spark to be filled with our world's thought leaders, writers, artists, philosophers, everyone who inspires us with their statements involving hopes and aspirations. And of course, today I'm focusing on the wonderful Chinese American Vera Wang. Now, her quote is profound. "Don't be afraid to take time to learn." Now, she made this comment while she was in an interview situation and discussing her time spent learning from the fellow fashion icon, Ralph Lauren. Now, she had imparted some wisdom about the importance of slowing down in service of better honing skills. So I thought that was really incredible that she delivered that nugget of wisdom to another fashion icon, Ralph Lauren. So don't be afraid to take time to learn. Absolutely true, right? This quote reminds us that slowing down is crucial. Slowing down to learn, to digest, and to master. It's so important to continue learning. Even when we're at the top of our game, there's always something new and fresh that comes in. It forces us to innovate, create, and continue inspiring. I'm happy Vera Wang's spark still burns brightly and continues to inspire so very many. All right, you guys, that wraps up today's very short and sweet episode. I'm looking forward to a nice long weekend. All right, you guys, I hope you have some fun. Well, let me know what's going on because June is right around the corner. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening on today's episode. And I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday.